So I got this Game Boy Micro from a guy for cheap, and it is in terrible condition. Obviously, I took it apart. The battery was dead and wouldn't hold a charge, so I ordered this third-party one from China. I don't know how good it is yet, but at least it holds a charge, so that's something. The speaker, wherever that ended up, the speaker is shot. It makes noise, but it sounds like a can of rocks. The ports are rusty. It's this 25th anniversary one, or maybe 20th, the Famicom style one. So it's a real shame that the case is in such bad condition, but it really looks awful. The faceplate is all scratched up. The actual metal has these deep scratches. In person, it really looks awful. On screen, it actually doesn't look that bad. But as of right now, there's no shell or case replacement options for the Game Boy Micro. What you have is what you get. But the good news is it turns on. It still works. So since I can't buff out these scratches or anything, I could cover it in stickers. I've seen some wraparound stickers that you can put on a Micro. I could paint it, but I guarantee it would not look good at all. So what I want to do is put it inside of a Super Nintendo controller. Cut out a hole for the screen right here on the front and wire the buttons to the micro buttons. Yes. I've never done this or anything, so I don't know if it's going to work. But I want to try, and I might as well film it. So here's my busted Super Nintendo controller. I tried to find an aftermarket one, so I wouldn't have to use a real one. I wanted one that looked like and felt like the original one, but I didn't like any of them. I bought like 5 different kinds, and they all look terrible, and they feel terrible. The buttons are too squishy. They're obviously knockoffs. So call me picky, but I want it to look, just like that. I want it to look nice, just like that, iconic. If anyone watching knows of a decent aftermarket Super Nintendo controller, let me know. But in the meantime, I thought it would be okay to use this broken one. It has bad wires. The select button is in bad shape. It's got some chips out of it. And that's okay, because that's just going to get cut away to make room for the screen. The screen has to go right there on the front. I want to put the headphone jack up here where the cord comes out. Nice circle hole already cut out. So if you clicked on this video so that you could make comments about how dare I destroy a Game Boy Micro or a Super Nintendo controller, you're totally right. I could probably put an aftermarket select button in here maybe that would work okay, and figure out a way to splice these wires up to get it working again. I probably could do that. The Micro, I don't know if there's any dignity in keeping it looking like this and just playing it anyway. Shell swaps are definitely commonplace for other handhelds that wear out. I could get a new faceplate for it. That would do something. But I think that these are both good candidates for something crazy like putting a Micro inside of a Super Nintendo controller. Just consider it like a shell swap for the Game Boy Micro. It's really scratched up, needs a new shell, and here's one. So I'm going to take these apart and see what I have to work with. I originally actually thought about putting the Game Boy Micro inside of a Nintendo 64 controller, and then you'd load the games in the back where you load the memory pack or the rumble pack. And the front of the N64 controller already has sort of a squarish outline on it. So it might have worked out okay, but maybe. But obviously tossing an N64 controller into your backpack or your pocket is harder than a Super Nintendo controller. Okay, I'll probably need to take a lot of these structures out, Dremel them down. This board looks okay. I might be able to reuse that for fixing another controller. This part's kind of dirty, but not too bad. So the screen, if I can kind of hold that up, the screen has to go, so this is the top, this thicker part is the top of the screen, so it has to go at least that far down the controller to fit inside, which means I can't keep these, there's no way I can keep these select and start buttons. And even the D-pad and the Y button there, I'm really pushing it on the space that I have. I hope this works out, but it's going to be sort of a tight fit. And I'm worried about putting a cartridge in the bottom. There's just not a good way to cut a huge hole in the bottom of something and have it look good. So I'm worried about that. Maybe I can put a door, but I want the headphone port there. I'll just start trimming it, and then I can start thinking about where I can fit this, if it will fit, and then where I can rewire stuff, rewire the buttons, rewire the power switch, the volume buttons. If I don't have a select and start button, then I'm down 2 buttons, because the Micro doesn't have an X or a Y button, but it does have volume buttons on the side. So I need to either decide that that'll be volume and then put a select and a start button on the bottom. That's probably what I'll do. I'm glad that it already has the shoulder buttons. I could put it into an original Nintendo controller. That might be cool. It's definitely smaller, but I like that this already has the shoulder buttons built into it. And I've just always really liked the Super Nintendo controller. This thing is dirty and it's got some yellow and some junk on it, so I'll have to really try and clean that up. But I think it'll be a good project. I think it'll turn out. I have to have high hopes, right? So I'm starting to cut this front shell out, and I decided there's no way for the Micro screen to be able to show in the middle without cutting out the middle of the controller board. So this is a third party. I took this out of a knockoff Super Nintendo controller, because I think that the board, the board in this controller that I'm using, the OEM one, I think the board is still good, and I just can't bring myself to cut it up. So I've had to sort of trim some pieces off of this one so that it'll fit, but it fits, and I think that the buttons are in the right place, and I think that it'll work if I just use that instead. So I can cut the middle out of that without losing sleep over it. And because the screen has to be pretty big, it has to go right there. It has to take up most of that space. So this part has to come out.